Welcome to Stencil Like a Pro Volume 2. We've got 2 volumes of stenciling because every time I pick up a stencil I learn more and more what a stencil can do for your painting. Stenciling isn't the stenciling where you base coat it and do all that kind of stuff, or you just make some letters like the government does on a box or a crate. Stenciling has evolved into just all kinds of things. And one of the things that we've done, because we make our stencils, is we've been making things like these multi-layered leaf stencils, word stencils, clock stencils. Every one of these projects has been done also using a stencil. That doesn't mean I base coated. In this case I use the stencil as a screen and a base coat, and to paint the design I didn't actually do anything with the traditional techniques. So it can really change how you do something. And because this is such a repetitious design, it shortened this from base coat, shade, highlight, trace, and all of that. It shortened it to about 10 minutes to do all of these leaves all in a row, and that's super fast. Like, you couldn't base these in 10 minutes probably. I also use stencils quite a bit for my lettering. Stencils for lettering are amazing because they give you just this quick, perfect letters. Okay, you can't use it for all lettering, but you can use it for a lot of lettering. And then I just can't even begin to say what I think about stenciling for clocks. Getting banding, perfect banding around a round object used to be something where you'd use a compass and then you'd tape both sides, and then it would have maybe a wonky line or something like that. And stencils take this out of that. This clock was done actually using the pear as a stencil to fill it in. Then I used it as a screen to protect it, the cutout part. And then I used 2 layers of leaves to give me a multi-layered look. And it looks like, I've done a traditional painting moment. Then I also used a stencil for my clock face. And you can use a stencil to do your drop shading on your letters, and I used it for my lettering. So this was done a lot with stencils. And I want to say this whole thing took me maybe 1 or 2 hours to do, versus in traditional ways you'd work a lot harder. So what I think stencils do is they just take a lot of the hard work out of things. Then you can use stencils in a number of other ways as well. You can use them, this is words and drop shadow. But then look over here, I've got some background stuff going on with my scrolly background. So I can make a deeper, more interesting background. And then for little repetitious moments where I don't really want to spend a whole lot of time detailing or whatever, I've just plopped in some little cute butterflies. They help me carry my color through the piece. I'm able to just say, oh, here I need a little purple here or a little purple there. And it helps me finish the piece in an interesting way. Then you can also use stencils. In this case I've done stencils as a very faint background piece. I've done it as part of my background with the scrolls back here. And I've also done it where I've pushed like texture glass through my stencil and then applied glitter to the texture glass that I applied. So this is, I'm painting still, but I'm not only doing this style of painting, I'm also using stencils to make everything else a little deeper, a little bit nicer. And I think when you look at like this, I've got this board on top and that's all fine, but by having this red with this darker color, with this light snowflake, with this glittery snowflake, with the next board up, with the background treatment, then the thing, like, it gives me this really deep moment in the painting that you don't normally get. And it's fast. So I like fast things. Okay, and the same thing goes for here with Mr. Santa Claus. This is Believe in the Magic. And so we've got stenciled words, and then we've really gone into this faint backgroundy use of the snowflakes. Look, that's a snowflake right there. You can barely tell it's there. But it almost gives it like a fabric-like look, or just barely embossed kind of look. And it really helps your eye just kind of fill things in a little bit. It's very wonderful. So, and I've used the snowflakes here to carry the beard color around the piece. Okay, but I would never in a million trillion years trace that snowflake and base coat it and be able to achieve that shade, that fadedness of it. Okay, I could use a color, but it's still not going to come out the way I do this. I do it with a scrubbing technique, and it's not going to come out with that very faint, I'm not quite here look, okay, like up here. So you couldn't achieve this with a paintbrush. You couldn't achieve some of the stuff like with the words up here. You could achieve it with a paintbrush, but it's not quite the same. And when you get into background words and things like that, you can do such deep things with these background word stencils that you could never ever achieve just using a liner brush and filling it in. So now that I've talked long enough, let me show you how I do some of these things. Okay, the way that I achieved this, I used this stencil as a screen. Okay, and the way that you do that is you lay it across, and you're just going to line it up with the cutout. And what I've done, this is screening out my background. Okay, so this is a screen of a leaf over a bunch of scrolls. Okay, you see now the cutout matches it, but you're still screening and making it so that the only thing that the stencil is going to do is the stuff that's cut out, which is always what a stencil does. But I'm using it to block out background areas as well. Okay, so what I'm going to do is show you how I did this. And what you always do, what I frequently do, is I start out with a jumbo dauber or a fingertip dauber, and I pounce, pounce, pounce. And I always pounce over here. Okay, this is advanced stenciling technique, so you need to understand the difference between just globbing on some paint and getting an image on there. I want to get it on there precise, and I don't want to have any bleed under and stuff like that. So I'm going to just pounce over here to make it just spread out over my applicator. And then when I come over here, I'm not going to pounce towards the cutout. I'm going to pounce straight up and down. Okay, and you'll see I still have a little bit of an outline there. That means it's not bleeding under. Okay, so I'll just get that nice and based in. I'll leave my stencil in place until I'm sure that I've got enough of a base coat. So usually I'll either let it dry or I'll just make a decision about whether or not I think it's enough. In this case, I need to leave it in place because I'm about to do the same thing. Now I could take it off and reapply it and go around again and then lay it back over. But in this case, I'm going to be talking about something else in just a second, so I'll just leave it there. Tack it over and over is a medium that you can use to make the back of your stencil sticky and repositionable. Okay, they also make a spray adhesive, which is also a tacky spray that you can use. Okay, so you would apply this to the back of your stencil, and it makes your stencil like a big post-it note. And I think you can see some of the residual right there. So that's why this is like sticking. When I peel it up, you can hear kind of it letting go. And you would just apply that with your jumbo dauber as well. My favorite brushes to use through the stencils are going to be something that is very, very tight and dense and has a nice tight weave, if you will, a tight head, and very short bristled. The longer ones of these dome brushes that are a little bit more floppy, I tend not to go for these. I tend to use these maybe in backgrounds, but I love these shorter, tighter ones. See the difference for my stenciling. And not just stenciling, this is the kind of the top pretty technique. Okay, so what you're going to do is we've got one side. Notice that I have my colors laid out in a sequential darkest to lightest area. Okay, and the same thing here. So I'm going to dip into my next lightest color. Okay, and I'm going to just start wobbling that around right through my stencil. Okay, the neat thing about this is you can do it right on through the stencil and you don't have to move your stencil, and you're doing all your highlighting and shading at the same time. By doing this scrubbing technique, that's going to make it very faint and very light. Now watch what I can do, which is really neat. If I had to have a brush for every one of these colors, you can see that I'd need like 8 brushes to get this project done just for the leaves. But I can go dirty brush into that next color, wipe it out on my paper towel, and then dirty brush one more time. And what this step right here did is it neutralized the color. Okay, so now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to redo the color, but I'm not going to bring it out as far. So my very first base coat goes all the way across. My next color goes faded to about the middle. the next color is going to be out here, the next color is going to be here, and the next color is going to be on the tips. That's going to give you a graduation of color and make it look like you worked really hard. Okay, and you can see all I'm doing is scribbling, and right now my eyes are closed. Okay, so you can scribble with your eyes closed. Okay, so now I'm going to neutralize, and then this will be the color I use. This is Marigold. Okay, and so we're going to go right up there next to the edge. You can see it's looking very, very yellow. And I can, if I need to, I could go Marigold into bleach sand, but I use bleach sand for some of the highlight stuff. Okay, so maybe I'll go back into Marigold just to make it a little bit more yellow. Okay, so we can see it doesn't look like much of anything, but if we peek, you can see what we've got in there. Okay, so now we're going to go into the orangey colors. And once again, same brush, I'm going to neutralize. Okay, so this is how you can use stencils like a shading. Like I'm shading right now, I'm highlighting anyway. But I'm doing it in such a way that it's not hard. Okay, so now did you see, watch, when I first do this, I go scrub, scrub, scrub. And then as I get into the middle, you'll notice I'm moving with a softer and softer and softer texture. Okay, my hand is no pressure and I'm just kind of sweeping across. And watch the difference right here. Okay, so that's what I'm doing with the scrubbing. That's what I'm doing at the end. So notice that that's sheer and that's almost base coaty. Okay, and then let's take it one step further. And this is what you did at first. Okay, so see the differences in the tone. Remember, bringing you back to those, the Santa Claus with the background stencils that are really faint, and I said you could never replicate that. It's because we're getting that scrubbed paint kind of look, because we are scrubbing paint, and it's getting that dusting look, and you can't get that with the paintbrush. So this is something that you have to do using a screen or a stencil in order to be able to do. Okay, now go into the next brighter color. You need a lot of paper towels. Okay, so now we'll go just over there on our edge. And notice the technique I'm using is this technique. Okay, I'm just very, very faintly going over it. Our final highlight is going to be our gold. Okay, and now I'll peel it off and see where we're at. Okay, so you can see that we've got this wonderful faded, shaded, pardon me, leaf. Okay, and now I've got another form of a stencil. This is sticky mesh. It's sticky on one side, and I can just put this over my piece, and it's not so sticky because I've used it a bunch of times. And I can go through this and create this lovely little check pattern. Imagine sitting there with your paintbrush and doing dibbly-dabbly little checks like that all over the place. So you can see by taking these stencils and going all the way around, okay, that it's very, very easy, and I've also spattered them, but to get a highlighted, shaded, detailed leaf that was screen painted, that is a repetitious border, but do it very quickly. Okay, so we're going to talk about how to make the lettering look, that faded kind of brushed look, so that it's something that you can't replicate. So I'm going to just use the same palettes of colors so I don't have to get a new paintbrush. I'm going to wipe off all my excess paint. And then maybe I'll start in the middle with something that's very faint. Okay, so I'll scrub. Okay, so then as we get out to the outer areas, okay, so notice that I'm not pouncing. Then what we can do is we can pick up maybe some darker color. You want it to be semi-related to the color that you had before. Then you can go and now you can be darker. And then as you get up there, you can fade your color in and out. So let's see what we've got so far. So see how that just has that kind of dreamy, awesome look. I love how I'm doing Easter projects here with brown. That kind of doesn't make sense, but that's what I started with. So now I've got that corner nice and dark. I'm kind of framing in my background. Now maybe I want to pick up some oranges or yellows. Okay, so now I don't have tack it over and over on this stencil because this stencil, I'm doing this over paper. Tack it over and over sticks to paper and then it kind of wrecks your stencil, so don't ever use it with paper. So now I can go across. Okay, and we can see what we get now. So now we're changing just a little bit of the color. You could also go through and you could do the a little bit of texture medium in this to make it a raised word background area. Okay, now load just a little bit of orange. Go stronger on the edges. Okay, we'll see what we got now. Okay, so do you see how that changes? Like, that's not base coating. Let me base coat something and show you what that looks like. A little flat brush here. And we'll go into cocoa because it'll be kind of tone on tone. Let's just base that in. It might leak under just a little bit, so don't judge based on that. But I'll show you the difference between a base coated lettering. Okay. So see the difference in how crisp and stuff the lines are, and then we've got this which almost just looks, I don't know, slightly textured and like it's got something neat going on. Another thing that you could do is you can use the stencil as a screen. And let me get a little water here in a round brush and say I wanted to do some details over my stenciled letters. What I can do is I could just go through and use it as a screen, and now I've got textured letters, you know, and I could go back the other way too if I wanted to. But ta-da, now you've got a detail on top. You could also use it as a dry brush moment, so you could drag down and do some shading using it as a screen once again. Now you could also do that with your dry rubbing technique. And so I could take the bottom of the candy word and I can give it some deepening. And now my candy letters are pre-highlighted. Okay, lots and lots of things that you can do using these techniques. Okay, you can use shaped stencils the same exact way. If you have some teacups, some coffee cups, some chicken wire is really cool. Scrolls, butterflies, anything at all. Words can be done the same exact way using your, soft. Now see how that just moved on me? Because this is actually a poorly bridged stencil. We actually pride ourselves in not having what we call finger traps. So our stencils are usually designed not to have those, and this is not one of ours. It is, however, a lovely stencil, so I'm using it anyway. Okay, so we'll go over here and we get our dry rub technique on the background. If you have something like that on a stencil, the way you can work your way around it is to hold on to it and work in the direction of the cut. Okay, so we'll get all this backgroundy stuff on, and then we'll go into the color again, and now we'll treat it as a darker thing, just around the edge. Okay, take a peek. So see, now what we've got is we've got some faint stuff that you can't quite tell, we've got some heavier things, and we've got some self-shading going on. So any shape will work to do this technique. Okay, another thing that you can do with your with stencils, we've got an awesome line of two-part stencils, and what this means is there is a piece to use for base coating and a piece to use to do your top detail. And what you can do with your jumbo daubers and other materials like that is you can go on and we can decide, okay, hey, I want to have a bright yellow butterfly. Okay, so we'll go ahead and we'll just pounce that all in with bright yellow. and get that all filled in much faster than base coating. Then we can side load these little daubers. I'll get some of my yellow out, and let's side load with, say, a burnt orange. Okay, now always pouncing over here. Do you notice that I do that a lot? I treat it like a brush. This is my paintbrush. Now we'll make it be, let's make it be bright in the outer edge. So we'll come over here, and now as I get my line on there, I'm going to rock back into the middle where I've got yellow. So I'm going to rock back over there, and that will give me a fade. And I can rock back and forth and go back and forth within it to get myself a complete fade out. Okay, so see how that just transitions. I can do it again with less paint and bring that shadow even just a little bit deeper. Okay, so isn't that cool? I think that's just fantastic just by itself. Okay, then you put the top details on, and see if I can see where I'm at. I've got a glare coming off of everything here. And I actually think I might have done this backwards for this particular stencil. That's a pop top right there, and it will pull your plastic stuff off of your, the plastic cap seal off your paints. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and do these in black, but I think these are supposed to be my colors on this stencil, which is fine. It'll still do the same thing, and it'll show you the effect. Okay, so we'll go through, just stencil. Okay, and now you've got your details. Okay, so two-part stencils are very cool because they're going to give you your detail step as well. Okay, now I'm going to show you how to do the drop shading. Okay, so I'll use that same black color, maybe mixed with a little bit of burnt or the russet. Notice I'm pouncing off over here. Okay, and so then what we'll do is we'll go ahead and just apply your stencil. Okay, and it seems like, oh, what are you doing? You're painting it in black. Let me go over here on the bigger letters. I don't think we need to have the whole letter done. Actually, let me do this off camera because that's the boring part. Okay, so I've got my Nor applied. Now take that off, and then what I'll do is I'll just apply to the upper here. Oh, I'm sticking on the edge of my cardboard thingy here. We'll drop it up and over, trying to keep it sort of even. Okay. And now what we do is we apply whatever our other color is going to be. And let's see, let's make it be orange. And darker orange. Okay. So now we'll reapply our orange color. And once again, I'll do this off camera. Okay, so you make sure that you've got, two coats where you want it. Okay. Because it's harder to line up a stencil afterwards. Now let's see what we have. And so you see we have perfect drop shading, exactly where we want it, and all done in 2 swipes of your stencil. Okay, a clock stencil is something that I didn't think I would ever find or see. And you don't see them very often, and I never saw one until I went up to Canada. And then I realized what it would take to do one, and then we've been doing them ever since. So, a clock stencil is part screen and part stencil. Okay, so what we want to do is we want to screen to the edge and screen out like the areas. We are going ahead and applying all of our border and everything, and because we've got a hole in the middle, that lines everything up. Now what you can do when you do this, because of all these bridging moments right here, is you can apply it, get your numbers on there and everything, and then you can turn it slightly and make sure that you're lined up to your edges in your circle, and then you can stipple right over where those bridges were, and that takes the work out of concealing your bridging. Okay, clock stencils are amazing. Now what the neat thing is that you could decide, I don't want this border, or I don't want this border, or whatever. You don't have to have it or not have it. You can decide that I want this number, and this number, and maybe nothing here. So you can choose selectively which pieces of the border or pieces of the stencil that you use. Okay, if you notice that I've used a leaf stencil very much like I used the leaf screen on the other project I showed you. I used the technique that is the faint technique, like I used on the words, and then I used the same technique that I used on the other leaves to shade and highlight using dry scumbling motion. So I based them, and I scumbled all with the stencil in place, and then I had all of my detail done. Okay, so super simple, and it can work in a more realistic form, or it can work in that folk art form that I showed you before. Then with the pear, I did the same thing as with the leaves, but I did it big. So I had to get a big brush. Okay, so then you just are scumbling using this as the stencil, and then I used this relief when I was doing the leaves, and I lined that up so that you can see right here and here. Let me get it lined up right. And we'll pretend like we've got it lined up right. Okay, so then I was able to go over my pear without messing it up, and then I didn't have to be careful or float or do any of those things. Stencils are very, very durable. This is 7mm Mylar, and they are super duper reusable. The way that you want to clean a stencil, if you choose to clean a stencil, I tend to not clean them, but if you can't see through them, sometimes that can be problematic. So what you can do is you can just put them in a sink with some hot soapy water, and just like a little bit, and let them soak there for a minute, and that paint should just rub right off after they've been in there for a few minutes. The tack it over and over does not come off with soapy water, so you can just rinse that and dry it, and it will remain tacky, and it'll go through use after use after use. I probably have gone 7-8 uses without wearing it off. On clock stencils, here's an example of the one that I used for the roses. This one, do you notice that there is this detail and that detail and this detail and this detail and this detail? I could have used or taken away any of these by masking. Let me show you how you do that. So get that clock out. Okay, is this the one that I used? Yeah. So go up there. Oh, it's not. This one's too small. Okay, well that's fine. It's almost the one that I used. That's funny. Okay, but if this was the one that I used, then what you can do, lay it down, and I could, let me see if I can find some, well I use tape, but I like Post-it notes a lot. So for example, if I didn't want this piece right here, this little diamond, I could take a piece of tape, pounce with my pouncer, and then take it off, tape on the back side, pounce with my pouncer, and now I've masked that little detail out. If I didn't want numbers there, but they were too close to the thing, I could just mask that with tape temporarily and continue on with my artwork. Okay, so it's super duper easy to keep out the detail that you want or don't want. This is a handy dandy little tool that is also a stencil, so sometimes tools can be stencils, and I'm assuming that this is the one I used for this, yeah. So this has got a centering line etched in. It starts at, I think, 5 inches is what it is. These alternate odds and evens. This is the CD size, then 6 inches, 8 inches, 10 inches, 12 inches, 14 inches, 16 and 18 inches. And then the odds go the other size. These are 1/4 inch checks. You line it up with your clock face, and you can, it's got your, you know, lines to say whether you're straight up and down or not. And I'm actually not, but it doesn't matter because they're checks. Anyway, and then you get that lined up there, and you can see that you can make perfectly even checks all the way around your piece. Okay, so, and all you have to do is rotate it and stipple in, and now you can have perfectly even checks all the time. Brilliant. Okay, and this will do all these sizes. This will go up to an 18-inch clock because it only has to be halfway. So like this is 9 inches on this side and 9 inches to this side, and you have an 18-inch clock. And you have all the sizes on one stencil. And you never have to measure or divide. There's a math formula to get these perfectly even around that looks like it's like that big. So it can be done, and we've done it, but you don't want to do it at home, not while you're painting. Okay, this is a fairly interesting tool that is also a stencil, and this is meant for round projects. And this is a banding tool. Okay, so what you can do is you can put this here on your circle or your center, and there's actually a template or an extra little piece that comes with it that is it shrinks that hole to just a pinpoint so that you could put like a pin in it and hold it and center. Alright, so what you can do with this is you can mark your bands. I'm going to get my Ghostwriter, and a Ghostwriter is this is a triple threat Ghostwriter. It's something that can be removed and you can't tell that it was there. It's a gray lead, a roller ball marker, that's for tracing your pattern, so no ink is there, but it rolls very smooth, and a white ceramic lead. Okay, so say you just wanted to mark your bands and do them the old-fashioned way, or you wanted to mark different band areas for a design. What you can do is you can just decide, okay, I want my line here, and then, whoops, this has got Crackle Medium all over it. A little bit rougher on Crackle Medium, and you can go all the way around your project and have a perfectly even line, and that erases with water spit eraser. Okay, the other thing that this does for you is, if you notice what just happened when I just moved that, is this will mark perfectly all of your placement for evenly dividing up your project. You can mark, whoops, I told you it was rough. You can mark straight up on the holes and tell yourself that that's where I'm going to want my other division. So you can divide your project. You can lay out where your clock hands go, or your clock numbers go. You can divide any project into perfectly even parts. It's a very, very handy tool. I don't even think I've begun to just figure out what you can do with it all. This goes all the way out, and it's marked and etched on here. Out here. Oh, I've got it upside down. Okay, so these are marked right here. So it's got the CD mark, and then there's 5 inches, 6 inches, 7 inches, 8 inches, 9 inches, and then of course all the marks in between so you can measure. And then it goes to 20 inches here, but we can get all the way out to a 24-inch clock by going to the outer edge. And that's because it's just a longer point out there. So very, very handy tool, and this is something that you just want to have around so that you can lay out your patterns and stuff. Okay, so you can take a snowflake stencil and you can do the faint thing that we showed. Remember that color is going to be something that gives your stencil its power. So I've got this, probably deep burgundy color back here, and then I've got this like dark brown, like maybe soft black kind of look. I could go the opposite direction. Instead of having subtle texture, I could have an overwhelming pattern by using a lighter red. And then I would be like just totally changing the theme or the look of the piece. The other way that you can use a stencil is you can put modeling paste or texture glass or texture crackle or texture anything. I did snow last week. So any kind of anything that you have that's a texture. Okay, so take a little bit of modeling paste. Okay, let's see if this stuff is thixotropic. I don't think it's going to be. Okay, that's nice and stiff. Alright, so we can take our modeling paste and just very, very strongly push it through. Strongly meaning get it all off. Don't leave a whole bunch on top. Okay, and now I've got this little raised edge. I don't know if you can see that that's raised, but that would be gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. And then what you can do is you can fill a couple more areas and put the fingers right through to everything. And now you can have a whole bunch of them laying there, and see how precise that is. So let me go in and get some more. And then what you've got is a background texture now. And after you get all that dry, you can paint it and then paint on the texture and get that wonderful relief. Okay, so that's something that you can do as well. Paper towel. Now we'll get into texture glass. A texture glass dries clear. Okay, and it's very, very, very much like the consistency of cold cream. Okay, now I'm going to go through this, and I can put that on, and it will also be a little bit raised, but it will take on things like glitter. So I'll take that off, and then I'll find my glitter. So I've got glitter here, and I've got glitter. If you haven't tried applying it through a squirt bottle like this, very, very handy. Okay, so I can apply that, and it will hold the glitter, and it'll hold all kinds of things. You could use beaded glitter glue if you're going to do something that's going to take a beating. You can apply some, healthier sized glitter. Okay, and so you can do whatever effect you want, but that's what I've got going on here, is these wonderful glitter things that just lift themselves off the background. And keep in mind that you can do this kind of technique with, well, let's go backwards a bit. You could do it with your clock face. You could do it with your words. You could do it with anything that's a stencil. So let's get a spring word here. It's not sticking down because I've got that raised edge. And let's do it as messy as humanly possible. But now you've got this beautiful raised letters that you could then glitter, and it's very subtle. It's a really lovely technique. You don't have to glitter. You could put Glamour Dust glitter paint through this, which has got varnish to stick the glitter to it, and then it wouldn't wipe off. So you could do something that would be like more permanent. So just in closing, I want to encourage you. This is petroleum jelly, and this is Clapham's beeswax. I've been doing a lot of techniques where I use petroleum jelly to create chipped cracked paint underneath paint. So you could, in theory, take petroleum jelly or wax, and you could push it through your stencil and then paint right over the top of it. You just put a nice heavy coat, kind of heavier than you normally would. And then when the paint dries, you can heat it and just wipe it off, and it will wipe off. It would wipe off in the basic pattern of your stencil. Okay, so when we're stenciling, like there's so many things anything that you can do with normal things, you can do through a stencil. So remember to play a little bit, and remember that maybe under versus over, so that you have a new paintable texture for your background. Chicken wire would be a great example of that. If you put chicken wire with modeling paste under your paint and then painted it, then your chicken and your pattern would have this lovely, it would catch on the chicken wire part. So anything that you can do over or under, you can do, anything you can do over, you can do under, and it creates a whole new look.